What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and this one will break down what's going on with the overall market, what you should be watching for moving forward. I'm also going to talk about what's happening to SPY, Tesla, the QQ, and a couple of tickers out there, what important data is coming out for today, what earnings are looking like for the day moving forward as well. But before I do anything like this, before I talk about the overall market, what you should be watching for, let me just mention a couple of things. I'm firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends very soon, in just about 8 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, guys, so looking at the pre-market, so far SPY is holding up quite decently. The market is gapping up as we predicted from yesterday, and we got a retest of this 449 area very close to our 50 EMA. But the question is, will the market try to continue pumping? Can the market try to hold above its critical support right now and then try to continue pushing? Or will the market end up getting another rug pull? I'm going to answer that question in just a couple of minutes. But first, let's talk about some things going on for the markets. So we actually have Bowman giving a speech right now from the Fed. Then we have Bostic also giving a speech right after that. And besides that, there's not really much other pieces of data coming out. But looking at the market right now, we did see futures quite green. We did see the market trying to see somewhat of a recovery so far. But once again, we're going to be watching if the market could break some critical resistance levels and if the market will try to hold. We can see that the Nasdaq, S&P 500, and other major stocks out there, they ended up dropping quite a bit on Friday. So it's very natural for us to gap up on a Monday like this. But once again, when you look at TA, things will look very different once you see, what happened for the weekly and the bigger time frames. Now, another thing I want to mention is that Walt Disney has earnings this week. This is going to make a lot of headlines. It's going to be very telling about the market, how the economy is doing, at least to some extent. We're going to find out how consumers are doing. We also have Berkshire Hathaway. Once again, they continue to grow their cash stack, and they're continuing to just do so because, once again, there is some ambiguity in the current state of the markets, and they could use this very promptly once we find out how things are looking in terms of CPI and the overall market. So this is just worth noting. During times of uncertainty, that's when we see Berkshire Hathaway tend to stash a lot more cash, and oil is starting to surge a lot more, and that has a lot to do with tensions around the world right now, as we have things happening in Russia, and Russia is the second largest crude oil exporter. Even though it's not as big for the US specifically, it tends to supply a lot for major European countries. And right now, oil is continuing to surge because of more conflicts. And as that happens, energy prices are going up. And this is very common for times like this as we approach the third quarter. And as we get closer to the fourth quarter as well, this is very important. And I want to just note this because this could lead to a big change in CPI. There's a possibility and a risk of this for the later months. So be very careful as CPI comes out near the end of the week. Now, as far as our data goes, you have Palantir, Lucid, Chegg, and just a couple of others coming out after the market closes. And so far, earnings are quite interesting. We have Berkshire Hathaway that just came out. They are holding a lot of cash. But now let's talk about the market. How are things looking so far? So SPY is currently up about 0.31% in the pre-market, holding up quite decently. But we do have this big gap below all the way down to the 446s. So if we see SPY break below our support, if it breaks below 447 flats, we're going to see this thing come all the way down to fill this gap in the 446s, and this thing could continue to slide. Now, if we end up breaking below the low we made during the very end of the day on Friday, if this low breaks, there is a risk of us coming even lower. And this is going to be another important target. If you look at the daily support on SPY, this is the daily chart basically. Our daily support trend line will take us all the way to where this gap support happens to be, around this 442 area. There's a risk of that if we end up breaking below the low we made on Friday. Just be well aware of that. We should see some buyers step in around that area for this gap fill if we do end up dropping like that over the next couple of days, if not by today. But what about for today specifically? What do I see happening? So we got the gap up. We're likely going to see the market gap up. There may be an attempt for it to try to break above this 50 EMA around this 449 area. If we break and hold above 449, then 450 becomes one possibility. That's going to be the next resistance levels to watch for. And then if we break below it, here are some other levels. You're going to be watching right now in the pre-market. 447.5 is also acting as a support. So watch that area very carefully. If you end up breaking below this support right here, there's going to likely be a bigger drop to fill the gap all the way down to the 446s. So that's going to be your support for the day, and we have our resistance as well. What do I think is more likely? From a technical analysis standpoint, it's very likely that the market may see more downside looking at the daily and weekly charts, which I showed you guys yesterday. And my only question is, will the drop happen today or will the drop end up happening later on during the week? My guts tells me, okay, and you always want to watch for price action to confirm this, but I think there's a risk, just based off technical analysis, there is a risk that the market could get a sell-off later on today. It's going to make an attempt to push up in the morning, try to hold around these levels, but it has to try to get above the 200 EMA on the 5-minute time frame. My gut tells me it's going to try to pop a little bit and see a little bit more downside, so be very careful for now. That's what it's suggesting at the time I'm recording this. For the IWM, it's basically the same thing. We have this big gap down here, down to about this 194 area. We're currently around 195. I think this thing is going to get a pop as we open, try to get close to like 195.31. If it could break the high from the pre-market, 196 is a possibility for it. But like I said before, it's going to be kind of tricky looking at this current setup. Is this going to like pop a little bit, then reject and come down? Or is this thing just going to try to hold up? I think the odds greatly favor it eventually trying to come down, but we have to watch and see how it rejects to support if that ends up being the case. Now, Tesla is very special compared to the market. It's very range bound for the pre-market. But let me just bring up some very important levels on it because Tesla has something very unique. So looking at Tesla, you want to go to your like 15 minutes or like your 30 minutes time frames, for example, and look at this trend right about here. So looking at Tesla, it's been basically range bound for the last couple of days. It has this range that's been going like back and forth on. And now the question is, and I drew out two possibilities just yesterday, but now the question is, can Tesla try to get a pop? If it does break the high it made here, could it get all the way up to the top of this channel? It's going to require a really bullish catalyst to do so. So we'll see what news comes out. And if not, don't forget it has this channel it's been stuck in. So watch these levels as support and resistance for either direction. But what is Tesla looking like in the morning? What is it looking like right now? And this is my answer. I mean, the thing about Tesla is it's testing our 200 EMA in the 5-minute time frame as resistance. And there's a good chance, a high probability that Tesla will try to pop in the morning, try to push up, above 255.99, try to get close to like 257 or so, could try to go a little higher and then reject off that and start slowing down. And then we also have this gap all the way down to like 253 that could get filled. So I'm going to be looking for like a pop and a drop in Tesla. And it either tries to bounce off this like 252.5 area around there and then just tries to hold up, or it could drop all the way down to 250 and get another retest of that, which is still very possible if we continue to sell off. So a pop and drop, and Tesla should retest, these lower levels if that ends up giving us, if we get confirmation of that first, of course. For resistance, don't forget to watch 255.99, 257.75, and then we have like 260 above that. For support, make sure you watch 254.25, 252.5, 250, and then our like 247.5 area. Once again, a pop and drop is what I'm anticipating. Watch for a nice pop in the morning. Tesla tends to pop in the mornings, then we'll see what happens after that. Now, as far as Aapl goes, Aapl has a similar setup as SPY. It got a nice pop in the morning. It is cooling off a little bit. It has this unfilled gap. It came very close to filling it around 182. It looks like it's going to be stuck between 180 and like 182 for the majority of the day. I'm going to be looking for it to sell off just a little bit. It's looking kind of weak for now, starting to downtrend just a bit. So watch for a 182 retest. If that breaks, 180 is a possibility for Aapl. My guts tells me it's going to pop a little bit and then come right back down, but be very, very sideways, kind of like range bound for the majority of the day. For the triple Q, it's the same thing as SPY. I'm going to be watching for a retest of about 375. I think it could get close to it in the morning, then start selling off. I've been really likely going to fill this gap down to about 372, and if that doesn't hold, then it's going to come all the way down to like 370, or it might just try to hold around there and just trade sideways. So watch for a pop and drop on the QQQ, at least for the morning period, and we will see what happens after that, how it reacts to support and resistance. As far as Nvda goes, yes, it's holding up nicely. We could see another pop to about this 452 or so area, maybe a little bit higher. That is also a possibility. Then I'm anticipating it to cool off just a bit and retest our 50 EMA and 200 EMA. Both of these EMAs are actually like right below it. And if it breaks below this 200, we're going to see it come all the way down, start sinking down into the 444 area, if not even lower levels than that. But that's what I see for Nvidia as the most likely move based off technical analysis. I think that's very probable. And don't forget that some of the momentum from Friday could still be in the markets, right? Unexpected moves could still come. One thing that's kind of like a red flag would be the fact that the dollar is green again. It's holding 102 nicely at support. If it keeps going, that's going to be a bearish signal for the markets. For Coinbase, I was hoping Coinbase would try to pop a little bit more in the mornings, just a little bit down in the pre-market. And don't forget that we have the imbalance down around like 84. So watch for a potential pop near open and a drop around there very, very soon. Finally, for Amazon, it's still holding up in the pre-market, but it does have an unfilled gap down around 139. So be very careful with Amazon, especially at this resistance. You're going to be watching this resistance right here, this 141 area. And then above that, we have this imbalance around 142.5. If it rejects off that, it could come down to fill the gap. And finally, for Meta, it's basically the same thing. Meta is trying to hold up. It's holding up quite decently. It's fighting 113.5. If that breaks, I mean, I could see it come all the way up to this resistance right here around this like 314 area. And then we have 316 above that. But the problem with Meta is if it does get a rejection, it has this unfilled gap way down here around this like 310 area. If it ends up breaking below this support around like 312, I could see it come all the way down to about 310 to 309. Then 307 becomes another possibility if it continues to break down. So a pop and drop seems very likely in the markets based off technical analysis. But always remember something, okay? I'm not going to simply just predict everything and be like, perfect when doing so. The best way to look at the markets is to read price action, look at your candlesticks, look at your volume, and look at your levels very carefully. Do we break support or do we hold above it? That is the best way to read these markets, not just simply like try to listen to someone that's, trying to predict everything. No one can predict everything in the markets. I do the best I still can for all of you. But I do believe based off TA, what I said is very probable, and make sure you just watch your levels for those confirmations before making any trades. All right, guys. So thank you for listening. Please have an absolutely spectacular rest of the day. Remain calm, cool, and collected. And don't forget to let the price action dictate your decisions, not simply your own speculation. Thank you. Market to the moon as the long term is very bright, and peace out.